You're listening to My Inner Teacher with Peter Starius and Crystal Ariel. The answers you seek are within you.
Welcome, Anahata. It's so nice to see you here after just being with you in Sedona for the Sedona Yoga Festival.
Yes,
And
it's so good to see you.
yeah, I just before we start the podcast, I just want to tell you how profound that nature walk I had with you. You led this nature walk through the Sedona red cliffs and pinon forest and cactus, and just hearing all those plant stories, rock stories. It just realized nature, why it's such a powerful healer when you actually understand the story of these plants and the story of these peaks and animals that kind of all work together. So thank you for that. And this podcast is really about this journey, which since I first met you, you've always seemed to be on a journey to your own inner teacher. And so this is probably just second nature to you. But for a lot of people, the choice to move away from some external authority or some teaching or mentor and step into their own inner being for guidance. This is what this is about, this kind of journey from the past into the present. And I'm curious, were you like this as a child? Were you already like kind of listening to a different drummer as a child?
I think in my early childhood, I was just alive and playful and climbing trees and super happy and adventurous and outgoing. And then, when we move into the second decade of life, we start realizing, oh, there's a matrix and I have to figure it out. We're no longer in the fantasy world. We have to start learning, we're in that transition of learning how to adult and how to take care of ourselves and figure out how to navigate who we are in the matrix of social pressures and society and money and career and all of these things. And so I shifted to start looking at my older siblings and the adults in my life. And that was for me at about 12 when I realized they don't know what they're doing. And it was a scary, dark night for me because, my older sister was pretty promiscuous. So there was that role model of how to be. My older brother was dealing drugs in the house to make an income. And that was a way to be. And what that attracted around the house and the people he was hanging out with and people that were coming and going all the time. And my dad, who was struggling financially and not, lying in business and, police came to the house and, cheating on taxes and things like that. And my mom, who was just oblivious and just didn't know or was just naive or what. And I was just looking around going, I don't think they have the answers that I'm looking for. And it was scary because these are all the people, these are my role models. This is what I got. This is my family. And so there was the option of find a new way or start playing the game, like do what they're doing. And I did start at 12, which is so wild for me to think of today, smoking pot and drinking, because I was like, I guess this is the way. And it was very, very short-lived because my heart and soul knew that that was not for me. But I was like, okay, I'm going to go try this out. And I dove in, and very quickly I was like, this isn't it. I don't trust what's happening here. The adults are not adulting. There's illegal activities that are being endorsed or ignored. And I did not feel safe. And, as a little kid, that was all still happening, but I just wasn't aware of it until I started becoming aware of and looking closer outside of myself. And it was a scary time. And I'm like, this is not right. My integrity, my inner knowing was like, no. And I was like spending as little time at home as I could. I started working. I, was an athlete, and I went to summer camp, Christian summer camp, and paid my way by selling peanuttles. I'm like, I just got to get out of here. I just knew that being there wasn't good for me. And so I went to summer camp for a week in Catalina and found religion, because that wasn't really part of my upbringing so much. And I'm like, at least at summer camp, there's morals and values and codes and ethics, and be a better person and treat your neighbor as you would yourself. There were some principles of values that I was so hungry for that I was definitely not getting at home. And I'm like, wow, religion. Okay, I'm diving in, and I'm Bible verse, and like, there was so much insight and guidance that I really took in. And then within 6 months, here comes the internal BS meter again, because I knew they said, okay, thou shalt not kill. And I was like, oh, that's probably, I can probably get with that. Like, thou shalt not kill as a commandment, probably pretty good advice. And then I'm reading in the Bible, in this old verse, Old Testament, praying for a successful slaughter in thy name, O Lord. And I was like, that there's a typo here. I'm like, wait a second. I'm pretty sure that this is an absolute, thou shalt not kill. And then there's this that is like, go ahead and slaughter, kill at will in the Lord's name. And my internal meter, my internal truth, Peter, was just going like crazy, going, this is not, something's fishy here. And that's where I was like, okay, I've got to learn how to be open to different things, different people, different paths, and I've got to listen to my own inner truth. And that's where I knew, okay, it's not drugs, it's not hyper promiscuity, it's not massive religion that is having conflicting truths for me. For me, I'm like, it might work for others. It might, all of those are different paths at different times, which I tried. And it was like, I get to choose my own road here, and I have to, or otherwise, if I follow any of these people that don't have the answers that I'm looking for, I'm gonna get lost.
Yeah, that's pretty common here, that we've noticed in these talks with people, that at some point there's that dichotomy, this paradox between what you're following either as a person or a philosophy, and then that inner authentic voice inside saying, that is not exactly syncing up with my forward path. So at that point, how old were you?
12. Like that
Still.
That year was pivotal for me.
Right.
Pivotal. I started drinking and smoking and quit. I started, religion and quit, all in this like very short period of time. And I was like, okay, I'm on my own here. And my inner guidance system was way better, because it helped guide me to the choices, the people, the relationships that were aligned for me.
Yeah.
And I did not give weight as much to my parents' opinions, because my bar for myself was, and my siblings, my bar for myself was higher than their bar for themselves and their bar for me. And so I'm like, okay, I have this inner truth and fire and passion. Just follow that. Just follow that. And by trusting that intuition and that inner knowing, it kind of dissipated a lot of extra social pressures, because I had already called BS on influencers in my life or role models in my life. So I certainly was not going to bend to peer pressure. So if someone was saying, hey, you got to do this, or you've got to take drugs, or you've got to be this way sexually, or whatever it is, I'm like, not interested. And it just did not, like, I don't care any more about your opinion. My opinion is where I'm going to go. And like that level of internal maturity, by just trusting that and honoring that, made my middle school and high school experiences fabulous. And I just kind of steered clear of, and just did not give a lot of energy to extra social pressure. At prom, like, hey, we got to sleep together, or we got to, do drugs because I paid for the limo and the prom ticket. I'm like, no, have at it. Go enjoy yourself, but it's not for me. And that sense of liberation, which is all in that solar plexus of your inner truth, your inner knowing, and your inner authenticity, and trusting that and unhooking from external pressure, external programs, external judgments was really liberating for me.
Yeah.
I was listening to a conversation that you had on the Be Zen Wellness podcast. And I really wanted to ask you about, I mean, you went deep into self-abandonment.
Oh, sure.
And I was thinking about how self-abandonment can keep us from listening to our inner teacher when we're constantly bombarded by these other voices and ideas that don't create the space for that. So, yeah, I guess I want to know more about self-abandonment, because I personally feel like I have experience with that. So how does that prevent one from listening to their inner teacher?
I think that there's different situations for each of us where there's something we need or want from a situation. And when what we need or want from a situation is greater than our intuition or our inner knowing, we'll self-abandon to get that thing. Whether it's love from somebody else, or whether it's acknowledgement, attention, it depends on how deep our need is at the moment for a thing. So I work with a lot of different couples. I work with a lot of different people that are going through relationship challenges where betrayal is a component somehow. And when I ask the question, when did you first know that, and whether it's career or personal or whatever, when did you first know something wasn't quite right? And you'll find that it's way early on in the process. I knew this wasn't the right person because there was a red flag on the first date. I knew this wasn't quite the right person because, the references I asked about, they didn't have great things to say. Or I really wanted to hire somebody, so I didn't check the references because we don't want to know. And so sometimes we're in a rush. Sometimes we need something, and we've got to look at that, with an inner curiosity of saying, what was I so hungry for that made me self-abandon? Well, I wanted to get married. I didn't want to lose them. I wanted the money. I wanted the job, because then we know our barter point, our prostitution point, our the point where I'm so hungry I don't see red flags. And so I think self-inquiry is really important here, and self-compassion, because even though in my middle school and high school days I was really just so knowing who I was, then I lost myself again in college, and because of stress and numbing a lot of childhood pain, then here came alcohol and promiscuity back again. And I had it figured out, and then we don't. And so there, in that journey, it's not a straight line. Personal development and awakening is not a straight line.
That's so true.
What do you think, Peter, about self-abandonment on your inner teacher journey?
I agree. It's cyclical. It is moments of strength and clarity, and then there's moments of a lost feeling. I'm so focused on one thing, and it's solving all these dilemmas or situations that I find challenging. And then I get to a point where I feel abandoned, really, that the voice goes away, and there's this, addiction is one of those things that I think all of us, if we're truly honest with ourselves, there are certain elements in our adulteration, let's call it, as we become adults, where we get attached to certain comfort substances or people or situations, like Netflix, it can be as simple as Netflix. Yeah. And I don't know, I'm kinder with myself now, though. And maybe it's because I've been on that rat wheel many times over decades of having it. Let's take diet for an instance. This is really something that fascinates me. I was really sick as a kid. And then I wasn't getting any guidance nutritionally from my parents. They were eating, Snickers bars, and going out to eat was going to McDonald's or Taco Bell on Friday night. That was like exciting for us as kids, But then in my late teens, early 20s, I was just filled with phlegm and infection and bronchial, just sick all the time. Getting into it, I'm going to eliminate. First thing I did was I eliminate dairy. And wow, what happens? No ice cream, no milk, no cheese, and all of a sudden, all that infection and mucus and stuff goes away. And it's like, wow, in 3 or 4 months, it's gone. And I think, okay, that's step number one. Step number two, there's this thing about killing animals, and maybe it's not a good idea to eat meat. So the inner voice says, yeah, let's do that. Let's go vegetarian. And that was way ahead of its time back in the late 60s, early 70s for mainstream America. For the hippie movement in that time, it was like right there for everyone to see. But in the worlds that I lived in, no, not so much. So here I am at family holidays or birthday parties. Can't eat the cake because it's got, dairy and blah, blah, blah. Can't eat the meat because it's not vegetarian. And just to carry this story one step further, then I meet this person who is into raw food. And I think, wow, that's kind of interesting. Like there is something that has always felt a little wrong about boiling my vegetables until they're limp. Maybe the best nutrition here is to keep the vegetables raw. And so then I was raw food for like a year. But then I get to a point where I start getting kind of sick again, seriously malnourished. And so then the cycle starts again. Okay, I need more protein. What should I start? So a little bit of fish creeps in, a little bit of egg creeps in. And then it goes full circle into starting to eat meat, because now there's this whole keto thing. And so now it's just this, okay, we're going in a circle, but there's awareness now. And it's a conscious awareness. And I'm compassionate, like if I eat meat, I want to know where that meat's coming from. Like I don't go to In-N-Out Burger and get a burger I don't know where it's sourced from. If it's sourced from a organic farm, yeah, then I'll take some meat. I call it medicinal meat. As a matter of fact, there's a joke in my family here that, well, when people say, are you vegan? Because they assume because I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a vegan. And I go, no, I'm a Megan. And they go, what's a Megan? And I go, well, I like being vegan. Like philosophically, it lines up with what I believe. But occasionally I take some medicinal meat, so occasionally I'll have a steak or, something that's like red meat, fish, whatever. But I source it. I want to know what's in that meat and how it was raised. And this seems to be like, maybe this is the place where I've arrived. And that is that it's not black and white anymore. It's like, okay, let's talk to each other about why you believe something to be the best optimal environment for whatever you're choosing. Food, work, is your job morally? Like, I could never own a liquor store, because that's just basically a certified drug dealer in a way, So this, I think we're evolving as a species into this need to recognize we're all different, that there are many choices in life, and as long as we're honoring some principle that we can share, like that be kind to your neighbor kind of mentality, and I think we can hold it all. We can make wise choices. We can listen to our inner guidance, but also be open to learning. I mean, Anahata, I have a question for you. Like, do you meet people that are inspiring to you that you want to learn from? Or do you feel like you've reached a point where you're just a peer with everyone?
Hey, quick note. Peter's Inner Teacher Academy is launching soon. If this is resonating with you, head over to innerteacheracademy.com and grab a spot on the wait list. These trainings are intimate and space is limited. So if you want to be first in line, tap the link in the description below and sign up.
You can also see details about my 2025 retreats at some incredible locations around the world, like Iceland, Austria, California, and New Zealand. Attendance at these trainings will count towards in-person hours for the Inner Teacher Academy. And now let's get back to the magic.
I think, well, first, two things to respond to what you were just talking about. One, self-compassion is necessary on this journey because we're going to have these swings. I like this, like you said, hey, I'm vegan, now I eat meat. Or I like this, standard American diet, now no fast food or whatever it is. Or this religion, now not. And to just honor that as more information is coming into your field, and as you grow and change, or you're catalyzed, or there's a pain wake up, that there may be 180s, 360s, hey, I believe this, I love this person, wait, no, not, divorce. And to have some self-compassion with the journey, I think is super important. And I call, my journey or my belief system, whether it's around food or spirituality or whatever it is, being a flexitarian. I'm like,
Oh, that's good.
I may eat this and I may really love this and also choose In-N-Out. I may do this and it's for me of like, okay, maybe this is the majority of the time. There's some things that are really black and white for me that feel right until otherwise notified, because otherwise it might be like, hey, now I might be open to this. So I call this, this like Amitabha Omyo Dofu, which is the feminine hand open and receiving over the dantian, over the second chakra. Hey, I'm open to different things, different people, different possibilities, different belief systems, different teachers, because you're saying, hey, are there people that you can learn from? I'm like, there are so many people I can learn from, but what I've learned around my journey with religion and other things is that doesn't mean everything that they believe or do is I'm going to let in. I'm always going to have that, Omyo Dofu, like Amitabha Omyo Dofu. I'm going to also add the second part of it where I'm going to be discerning if that's true or right for me, whether it's a spiritual teacher, because there's lots of things that I might be like, wow, that's amazing information. And there's some things where I might be like, hold up, that doesn't ring true for me in this moment. That doesn't mean it isn't a collective truth for that person, but I reserve the right to veto, to filter, to align and say, I may not be ready for that. Or it might not feel like the right thing. So anything can be a medicine or a poison. Anything. Yoga, as you know, can be a medicine or a poison, because if we do too many handstands without core strength, then we have wrist inflammation and then we have injuries, which we all know different injuries that we've had from loving a thing or doing something too often. And so for me, with different role models, I'm always open, because somebody can teach me, even if I don't agree with certain philosophies or beliefs in who they are or what they're doing, I still might learn from them something.
Yeah.
Maybe it's what not to do. Maybe it's they're reflecting to me how I'm showing up, and that's a value to me. I can learn just by our interaction. And so this goes back to, yes, being discerning, and the irony is seeing everyone as teacher. Yeah. It's like, oh, look at me getting triggered here. Look at my heart. Look at me being triggered here. So somebody that I might not put on the pedestal of being an awakened, enlightened being may have more to help me refine in my own integrity and open my heart more to experience or choose less judgment in a given moment. So I'm less seeking all-knowing teachers and more about how can I continue to allow everyday experiences and to be humble and open and listening enough to ask, what can I learn here? Or what is the universe or this person trying to show me, so that I can adjust, adapt, put a boundary, say no, change my tone, forgive myself, face something that I've been avoiding. And so I think there's plenty. I think there's plenty when I look at the world that way that is still like a constant teacher, constant.
I want to ask you about your name.
Yes.
Because that's not your birth name. Is that your birth name? Anahata?
No. my parents would have definitely not chosen that.
So I want to know what made you change your name, and do you think it has anything to do with really helping you step into this new idea of who you thought this new creation of who you wanted to be?
Yes, thanks for asking that. When I started, I'd say I had that wake-up call through the dark night of the soul at 12, and it really helped me navigate. There was another one in life at around 33 when integrity-wise I knew my marriage, I'm like, this is not, there's a handful of things where I'd be like, no, this is not okay. And one of those things showed up and it wasn't going to change. And I was like, this isn't okay with me. I'm not going to stay here for this. And I also had twins that were 3 years old. So I had a lot of practice with listening to my inner knowing, and that took, talk about the inner teacher, Peter, like that took a lot of strength and courage to listen and value my own integrity and my own truth at that point, knowing that at my heart and soul, I didn't want to break up my family. But I also knew that there was very few situations in which where I was like, no. So in doing that, in making that choice with twins that were 3 years old, I had a lot of emotion to process, for sure, because I didn't want to pass down my emotional trauma while I was parenting. So I dove into shamanism, I dove into yoga, I dove into neuro-linguistic, mindset, belief systems, raw food. Like I dove in. I was so hungry, and I started exploring different spiritual principles within yoga, within Buddhism, within nature, within shamanism. And I started finding a new form of spirituality, not religion, but spirituality that fit me. I'm like, I can blend it. And that's where the authenticity came in, is like, I can blend shamanism with spirituality. That feels right to me. Nature wisdom teachings with learning about the chakras, and also meditations and like really connecting to higher divine guidance. And in doing so, one of my meditation teachers that I was studying really deeply with at the time said, it's time for your name. And I knew it was going to be the heart. Like I knew that I was studying what blocks the heart, what opens the heart, what heals the heart, what closes the heart, how it gets wounded, how it gets healed, how it expresses in its fullest embodiment. So I knew, like heart and soul, that studying the Anahata, which is the Sanskrit term for the heart chakra, was going to be a GPS, a guiding, direction point for me to keep studying what is love, what isn't love, and how can I embody and express more of it. So they said Anahata, and I was like, yeah, that feels right. And they said, but we're going to add something to it. Ananda is that bliss, that nectar that is even a frequency above love, that is joyful and alive. And it's like blissful love, blissful heart. It's not crucifixion, unconditional love. It's joy, silly, alive love. And so it took me years before I would take that name, even though it was gifted to me, because I'm like, I'm still not in this place, because I was still navigating so much resentment and pain as I was going through my healing process around my divorce. Or marital liberation is what I call it.
It's a great term.
I just was like, I'm not going through divorce. I'm renaming that. I'm calling it a marital liberation. And so, because back to neuro-linguistic programming, I'm like, how I speak it is the spells I cast into the universe. And so I was just a lot of refining, and I knew that I had a lot more healing to do in my heart and with my inner child, which, by the way, we have a gift. I have a gift for you guys that are listening, and that's the guided visualization to heal inner child core wounds. Because I was witnessing, when I started studying my heart, and doing a lot of the inner work, shamanic, emotional release work, like deep, heavy excavations, which I teach. I've been doing that work for 25 years. I facilitate that. I teach that to really help the core wound healing and to excavate the pain and the anger, the resentment, the grief, the sadness that is there, the shame that is there, so that the self can be revealed again. The true, authentic, radiant self can be set free again. And in that process, I kept witnessing the disparity between how I loved my kids so openly and fully and how my heart would close really deeply, like an iron dungeon doors with chains around it. I literally heard that when it was with the two greatest villains in my life, my dad and my husband. And I was like, I have a lot more work to do here. Before I can step into being Anahata, I have to more often than not all the way perfect, always blissful heart, because that's not in reality for me at this moment. I need to do enough healing so that I'm more often than not in my heart.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I've years of excavating, healing, forgiveness, personal development work, empowerment work. Then I'm like, okay, I'm more often than not. And when I'm not, I can still open my heart to self-compassion and say, look, I'm still hurt there. Oh, look at my inner child is acting out. Oh, the part of me that is triggered right now is closing my heart. And so I can use all of the chakras even to witness when I'm not in my heart, and I'm more likely to understand it and have compassion. Doesn't mean I move into the heart quickly, but it's a journey. And so that has been the same thing that I do when I'm coaching and teaching and working with my clients or with my students. It's going to keep coming back to the heart and all of the things that block it or expand it. Like, we're going to dive in deep to where there are scars or beliefs or limitations of somehow that is keeping the heart from fully expanding and shining. And so that will identify where there's codependencies, that will identify where there's self-judgment, where there's belief systems that are inhibiting authenticity and love and how to unhook from those things. And that's, my whole practice is helping people navigate through that.
So how do this free gift that you're offering, what you just described is for two questions for you. Number one is this offering including some of that practice to look at stuff, and then how do they get that? How are you making that available?
In the show notes, there's a link. So go grab it in the show notes of this podcast, and then you can sign up to get it's a guided visualization. And it's one of the first steps to just let me go on a journey to witness my wounded self. Whether that is you at 6 or whether that's you at 26, 56, or 76, that the part of you that has been wounded or feels neglected or abandoned or misunderstood or bullied, hurt at any age. It's a journey to go to that version of ourselves and just, instead of neglect and put it under the carpet and ignore and sedate, not that isn't the go-to, to run, hide, ignore, sedate, blame, and distract when there is pain. And I've done all of those. I'm good at all of those, I'm sure. We all have our favorites, whether it's distracting with Netflix or if it's sedating with wine or even working out or whatever it is. It's a journey just to go inward. It's a guided journey because we tend to not be very good at holding space for ourselves.
Right.
Because then we don't know how, and we weren't raised, and it's a pain place. So it's a journey to help guide to go and just hold and be with that version of us, to also listen. What does that version of me need? Do they need safety? Do they need a boundary? Do they need, to be heard? What do they need? And so it begins this relationship with inner inquiry, with our pain body. And then, most of my work is in person in Sedona. I run a beautiful center here in Sedona called Shine, and it's a sanctuary for the soul. We have amazing practitioners, including myself and a lot of other practitioners that are skilled in various healing modalities or expansion modalities or stress relief modalities, from sound healing to shamanic journeys, breath work, Reiki. And depending on where one is on the journey, that's a great place to start, is with a guided visualization. And if you are ready for and need more one-on-one support or group support, that's a great place to start, because, okay, let me begin this journey of experiences that help me engage with my inner landscape and see what's there and face what's there, release what's there, learn from the process so that we can move from victim or contraction or rebellion or sedating to, okay, I'm going to make a change from this. I'm going to learn. I'm going to transmute it into something better. I'm going to take this wound and make it into something that provides more strength, more courage, more authenticity. And that's the alchemization or the transformational empowerment process that I absolutely have fallen in love with, where we can take a trauma and it doesn't have to define us. Or we can take a part of ourselves, like my Hotown self. Like I said, oh, I was all pristine in my middle school and high school years, and then, wow, freshman year was just a shit show. I mean, I was Hotown, drinking, hoeing around, and it's like, oh man. And like, even when we can go to our least conscious self, where we've hurt ourselves and others and we have caused the most damage, and to, without shame, have compassion for our darkest parts, when we have, from pain or ignorance or whatever, made the most hurtful decisions in our life, because we've got to face our shadow self.
That's right.
And integrate it. Not, oh, that's not me. It's 100%. Well, not 100%, but it is you. It's not always you, but it's you. And to have this process of witnessing your shadow self and seeing, yeah, that's me when I'm angry. Yeah, that's me when I'm hurt. That's me when I feel betrayed. That's me when I'm drunk. That's me when I feel needy, alone, and unloved. Yes, let's face those behaviors, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of, how did I get there so that I can navigate other choices so that I don't find myself there? And how can I forgive myself for the choices that I have made so that I can make better choices in the future? And that, to me, is a process that takes more than just a guided visualization. It takes a lot of self-inquiry and practice to say, okay, what am I learning about myself and what can I do differently? But you've got to be ready to look within and take accountability for what you've created or destroyed in your life so that you can redirect and build a different life. And that's to me, I've fallen in love with the success stories that happen of people that are ready and willing to turn it around. And like, my heart is so fulfilled by witnessing and holding space for extraordinary transformations that are now doing such great things in the world. And to have met somebody in the crossroads and supported their journey, it's really fulfilling for me.
That is a consistent story in the interviews or the conversations that we've been having with people, that these shadow elements become gifts. They become gifts for others. And in my own journeys, I totally identify with all that. The worst injury I've ever had in my life has been the best thing that's ever happened in my life. So, and Crystal, I want to just kind of, acknowledge some of the conversations you and I have had in private. When I think about bringing Anahata here, the last thing that I was thinking about was, the thing that I was thinking about was more my relationship to her, but listening to her talk, it just feels to me like maybe she's here to influence, or not influence, inspire you. Do you find that?
Oh yeah. I share a lot of similarities. Not finding enlightenment at 12. That did not happen for me. But
Fully enlightened at 12. It started.
Well, I still had no clue back then, but yeah, a lot of just your journey, a lot of the themes with being around. I mean, I grew up in Miami, so drugs, promiscuity, yes. I mean, all of that, and then religion, falling deep into that. And I was listening to that conversation I mentioned earlier, and I was thinking, like sometimes we do. And I'd like to ask this to both of you, like, how do you deal with heavy guilt I feel like guilt is one of those lingering traumas from organized religion that sometimes, like, it's generational. It's like, woof, it goes way back there. And then you have this guilt that keeps you small because you feel guilty, because you need to be on the same level as suffering, or it's wrong. It's wrong for you to do better. And then I try to switch it and say, that's the wrong way to think about it, because if you stay down, then everyone stays down, and who's going to go up to bring everybody up, Or wanting to do things that maybe society frowns upon, or they're judgmental about it, but your inner teacher is guiding you to do these things. And I mean, Anahata, you were talking about how often, like, family, when you're living at home, rewards you for behavior that they want to see, not necessarily for the behavior that you, it's like this false reward system where you're like, okay, if I behave and I do the thing that I'm supposed to do, then I will get rewarded. And that becomes your habit. And so breaking away from that becomes difficult. So yeah, Peter and Anahata, I just want to know, like, how do you work with people that have guilt as an obstacle that's not even theirs?
Yeah. I work a lot with people that are navigating that, because it's so common in our culture to have some interaction with religion in a positive way, and then also feel the wait, this part of it didn't quite feel right, the shaming, and yet the community support when someone's in need, gosh, that feels really good, And so back to this journey is to walk somebody through that journey of discovery. What feels right to you and what doesn't? And what would feel better if you were writing the book on religion and spirituality? What commandments, what beliefs, what values would you add into there? And, if you were the one connected to source, and if you could go on that journey and do it the way that feels right in your heart, what would you say that would be different than those passages, beliefs, the behaviors that are bringing guilt or judgment to the forefront? Like, what is really true then? If this doesn't feel right, and you're right, let's just say, if doesn't feel right, what does feel right to you? And permission to move towards that. And one of the things that I think is really, really helpful that I teach often is clear boundaries, so that your inner knowing is separate, or your inner truth is allowed to exist as somebody else's truth and perspective is allowed to exist. But down the middle, there's this line that says, but my truth is more important than somebody else's truth. And my emotions are more important than somebody else's disappointment that I'm honoring my truth. And what happens when that boundary is so enmeshed, and that everybody else's judgment and everybody else's opinions is guiding your internal, is guiding you, the box of what is possible and what is okay just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and gets tighter and tighter and tighter until you're suffocating. And that's usually when people rebel, or they break through, or they just keep hiding. And that's when we have these sinister polarities where here's what we show to everybody, and then there's this dark shadow. Yeah. That's where it's like, oh yeah, this is, I'm a goody, and la 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 la, yeah, I'm going to put my bow on and my fancy shoes, and I'm going to go to church, and I'm just going to pretend it's all. And the disparity, the polarity becomes so great that it starts creating systems of destruction.
Yeah.
Addiction, behaviors, shadow behaviors, because there's rebellion, and if it can't be outwardly expressed, you bet it's going to be inwardly expressed. And we can only hide those for so long until there's a breaking point. And that breaking point is designed to wake you up. It's designed to say, I cannot survive like this. And it is, in fact, the wake-up call, the spiritual awakening that the whole experience is serving up for you. Like, am I going to choose truth? Am I going to choose my own self? Am I going to and it's the individuation from the root chakra, the community, the religion, the community beliefs, up to the solar plexus, that's self-identity, so that we're not allowing the community to decide who we are, who we love, and what we choose in life. It's a maturing that's happening in the solar plexus that is a rite of passage for everybody to individuate from collective think, whether that's at 12 or 45. Like, there will come an opportunity to individuate and grow into your authentic expression, because you can't remain a pawn in somebody else's reality for all of life. You can, when we know what that looks like. And so it's this invitation to have a wake-up call and face
What do you think,
the
Peter?
consequences.
Yeah.
Well, when you posed that scenario, I was thinking about my own guilt and the guilt that I grew up with as growing up in Catholic Church, Eastern Catholic Church. It was pretty subtle. Subtle in the sense that there were just rules that we were bound by, attitudes that we were bound by, that I didn't have any context to be able to say, oh, that doesn't even feel right. It was just what we did, what we do. And I did get to a point where I recognized the suppression of the spirit, my spirit, in that context. And that's when I stopped really paying attention to going to church. And even, I just didn't really feel like there was the need to recognize some external authority, God figure, whatever you want to call it, in a beautiful environment of the world. It became that aha moment, and I think I remember the moment. It was this comedian, George Carlin, and he was talking about God and religion, and he's pretty funny, how he pokes at the inconsistencies of the religious doctrine. And he said, well, I like the sun. I'm going to worship the sun. I can see it. It gives me light. It gives me warmth. It doesn't disappoint. It was just like, God, this makes such sense. And the deeper message for me was, nature is God's footprint in a way. It's the places where you get in nature, you see how God has been there. God is there. It's just that outer nature just satisfies something deep inside myself. And it wasn't until this journey through injury that I started to realize I'm part of nature. And when I direct my attention inward, there's an inner nature that's as vast and awe-inspiring as the external nature. In the night sky, the ocean, these massive expanses of creation are also inward. And then if I wasn't able to be out in nature, if I was living in an urban environment, I at least could turn my attention into this inner environment through the practice of yoga. And especially the yoga that I started to do after the injury, recovering from the injury, which was all about creating space, literally, where the body had contracted, braced to protect some psychological or physical wound. Now I was turning right towards that contraction, right towards that challenge, and with as much softness as compassion as I could muster. That softening process, that turning towards, just created this incredible feeling of balance and space and bliss. Bliss because the contraction left. Like when you turn and face it and soften and create space, all that subconscious contraction just leaves the body and leaves the mind. Now, like Anahata, what you were saying earlier, it's cyclical. I wish I could say that all my guilt and all my obstacles are gone forever, but no, they show up again. They show up in different forms, in dreams, sometimes in a person that kind of I meet that reminds me of the situation that was cause of grief and pain. And the lesson there for me, Crystal, is that there is a quality of grieving that is also a gift. Like when we think about pain being a gift, that's a threshold that most inner travelers, inner teacher seekers cross. We cross into this, oh, that pain, yeah, it was so like existential in the moment. But in hindsight, it's this beautiful blossoming into a deeper quality of awareness that you can hold, and then you can have that compassion and grace for others. Earlier in the journey, you can help those people that are just starting out on that journey, help them realize that will pass as well. And it isn't about getting beyond it, it's about integration. It's how do we integrate those? And there are things that during the kind of cancel culture wars, where if someone didn't like what you were saying, they just defriended you or whatever it was. And because I wasn't much big on social media, it never really influenced me. But it did influence me in some of the places where I was physically going to teach. And those physical places started to say, oh, Peter, some people didn't feel safe in your class. And I go, oh, and what was it? And they said, well, some of the things that you were saying, they didn't feel safe. And I said, well, they were not safe with what I was saying. Whose responsibility is that? Like what I'm saying, I'm sharing from my heart, and this journey towards pain and this, this kind of trauma-informed philosophy, if that philosophy doesn't include incorporating the residue from trauma and processing it so that it is a gift to those others that are in the process, then yeah, I guess what I said would be frightening. But that had real consequences in my life, where, places that I was going where I financially really depended on some of those things to kind of support my life were gone overnight. And that shock of like, wow, this is really happening. I'm walking my path. I'm, always learning about how to deliver the message that I'm speaking in a more palatable way. But obviously, this things that I've said have created fear or anxiety. And is it inevitable? I think it is inevitable for the person listening and also for me speaking. I am less, there's an urgency that's not quite there to help. Like I can listen, and then if there's a relationship where we're beyond just like the first date, we're beyond just the first meeting of our relationship, then I can probe a little bit and I can say, well, how open are you to maybe looking at it in a slightly different way? And these are the things that, do I have guilt in this moment? No, I don't have any guilt in this moment. In this moment, I'm in my happy place. I'm talking to people that resonate with me. This format that we have here has been such a joy for me to actually have these kinds of conversations. So I don't know if that answered your question, Crystal, but
it did, and then some. And we have to, it's time to close. Okay. So we have to do a part 2 if you're down to come back, Anahata. Because you just unpacked a whole bunch of stuff there that
it's true. Whatever you're going through, there will be some grief there. Whether it's, I wish I would have made a different choice, or it's time for me to leave this community behind, and I'm sad about that, or I'm going to make this choice for my own health to stop drinking, and that means that this community that I've been drinking with, it probably not going to hang out, and so there is, along the personal development process and in the nature of this podcast of listening to that inner wisdom, that is going to invite an unhooking from environments, substances, lifestyles, people, community, thoughts, belief systems that don't align with who you're becoming. And so in any personal development support system, there will need to be some space to hold for the trauma, the pain, the truth, the emotion, the grief, the joy, the relief, like whatever it is, so that that process, that the personal development journey can happen. But the more you grow and evolve, the more you say goodbye to things that used to fit. That doesn't mean there isn't a process or a sadness or a regret. And so in helping people with a personal development journey, like there's definitely going to be support in all of those ways, without judgment, without rushing, without pushing, and just to be gentle and honest and supportive. And I really thank you guys both for holding a platform that is just honest and real, and not like Peter was saying, hey, sometimes this is going to trigger people. Yes, you being in your truth is not going to be everybody's truth, just like all three of us don't like all the same music all the time. That doesn't mean those musicians aren't incredible at their craft, but I might not like certain kinds of music. That doesn't mean it's not amazing. And so I appreciate the candid conversations, the real stories, the vulnerable shares, and just the authentic, platform that you guys have created here to just explore what is the process of trusting your inner knowing and your intuition. And we're sometimes that is different for all of us. Like this inner knowing might be a feeling, clairsentience, it might be clairvoyance, seeing things, it might be clairaudience, hearing things, and claircognizance, knowing things. And it also might be clairavoidance and clairignorance, because we're all probably pretty good at ignoring that inner guidance system and avoiding the truth that we don't want to deal with or face. And that's part of the journey also, is recognizing when we're kind of like, I don't want to know, I don't want to face it.
Exactly.
So
more on not facing it in the part 2.
Okay, I'm all about
we'll dive
it.
deep into that.
I'm all about it.
Thank you so much for being here with us and sharing all your wisdom.
Thank you. I hope those that felt really inspired or touched by it will download the recording or come to Sedona and have their own personal experience or a retreat or sessions or breath work or whatever. And Peter's going to come to shine in 2026. I'm planting seeds that you're going to come and do a retreat here, and
Me too.
among the red rocks in Sedona.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
To be continued.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for this episode. Be well and stay open to the teacher within. If you've enjoyed our time together, follow or subscribe and stay tuned for upcoming chats you don't want to miss.